welcome to Inside the 90. I'm Jami Mullikin. I'm your host today. Super excited to be here with Tracy Brown. We've got a long journey together, and we're going to unpack that. But we're really just going to dig into what Tracy's journey has been with YourSix and what it's been like to live inside the 90-day world.
Yeah. Thank you, Jami, for having me. I work for YourSix. We're a startup in the physical security space, and I've been there for about 4.5 years. And my career actually started with a startup that was purchased by a larger company that we later, our paths crossed there. And then coming back to a startup has been just so fun to just start to build something again and work with a group of people that are just really determined to make a difference in this technology space. So it's been super fun, and we just continue to grow and find new ways to do things. Stumble sometimes and learn from those stumbles, but we have good people around us that are helping us go through it. So it's been fun.
Awesome. Well, and so we got reintroduced. So we both live in Greenville, South Carolina, although your company's based out of Minneapolis.
Yep.
And Tracy reached out and said, "Hey, we're getting ready to go through a fundraise, some Series A funding, and we're ready to really engage with a marketing partner."
Yeah.
And we started talking, and me as an agency doing my conversations to figure out what good was going to look like for y'all, and then we got done. I think it was about an hour of healthy conversation, and I was like, "Awesome, we can do all these things that you're looking for." I was like, and longer term, we actually run with our clients on a marketing operating system, and we work with clients that run on the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Are you familiar with EOS? And your answer was?
Yes. We're actually trying to do it. I think at that point we were just scratching the surface with it though, right? So when I joined YourSix, I wasn't on the leadership team in the beginning, and then I advanced and was invited to join the leadership team, and they handed me this book, Traction. And it was like, hey, we're running off of this. You need to read this, and I would like to say I still have time to read books, but I have a 9-year-old and lots of things going on. And so I do walk, though, and I listen to audibles. And so I listened to the Traction book, and I'm literally probably talking to myself out loud on my walk, like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, good, whichever. And so we were reading the book. We were meeting weekly. We had, set some rocks. But that was it. And most of the time, we would set our rocks and not revisit the rock until after the quarter end. And everybody was kind of looking at each other like, oh, no, I need to color these. And let's see how we did. And so it really wasn't until, we got the Series A. And our our investment partner, was running on EOS as well. And they were like, hey, we really need to get you guys fully running on it and understanding, and then eventually pull it through the company. And so when we were talking, we were searching for an implementer.
Yeah.
And I know you know a lot of people within the space, and I asked if you knew anyone.
Yeah, y'all reached out, and I said, I've got a handful of people, but you're a technology company, and Andrew Geil is our implementer, and he comes from this space. And I think at the time, you're like, we're going to go through the process. We're going to interview multiple.
Yep.
And I just kind of passed the list on to you and Eric. And then I remember Andrew coming back around a few weeks later, and he was like, hey, I got YourSix. We're going to be working together.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually, it's another cool effect here, which is Andrew's our implementer and he's your implementer.
Yeah.
And then we're working together. And so it's a really tight strategic relationship.
Yeah. The synergies have actually been amazing.
Yeah.
Because after we, are going through the steps of EOS and really implementing it, like truly implementing it, being able to go to you and talk that same language and then say, okay, Andrew said you'll help me word this and get this where it needs to be. And it's just made us move faster, to be quite honest, because we're not having to, explain, like, this is where this is coming from. You know exactly where we're coming from. And Andrew knows what you can do and what we've just done.
Yep.
And so it's been such a nice little, triangle of resources to have, and made it honestly so much easier for us to implement, because there's so many resources out there, but it's so nice to also be able just to call someone and be like, okay, did we do this right? Are we thinking about this the right way? The framework's there, but also you have to make the framework work for your company. And so having that community and that resource has been really valuable as we go through this journey.
Yeah, and Andrew and I have some ground rules, which is like we will not share anything confidential with each other.
Yeah.
And we will take insights and input from him, even on stuff that you may not have seen yet, because he is in the same co-work space as us. But we don't take direction. We're just very like, all right, we hear all that. That's awesome. But just the collaboration that we all willingly share too.
Right.
From our perspective as having a marketing partner or having as a marketing client, the language is just there.
Yeah.
It's just so much more fluid.
Yeah, it is. It just makes just speaking to each other so much easier. And it's kind of fun because Andrew's on the journey with us. And so then as he sees some of the marketing, outputs of the work we've done, like the new values reworded and the voice and the promise and the, all these things, you can see him kind of light up as like, oh, I was part of that. I helped get them, to this point and then look at what it looks like now. And I just feel like, I don't want to speak for him, but I've got to think that's kind of satisfying to see it come from a fatigued conference room of a 2-day intensive to, the beautiful output that we've been able to do working together, right? So I think that's been fun. And to show him some of those outputs, has been, I think, motivating for him as well.
Yeah, we'll insert the clip right here.
Again?
I think is it possible to get chills from watching another company's brand come to life? It's pretty amazing.
So Andrew, I have a clip of Andrew seeing it where he was like, I have goosebumps and it's not even my company.
It was. It just, it's just been fun for like everybody involved to just feel like you can literally feel we're on this path and we're like just on the verge of really propelling off of it, right? And I think when you work for a startup, that can be a long road where you're kind of just doing everything you can possibly do, to keep things moving and whichever. And then you do get an injection of money in it. It's really that validation of like, hey, people believe in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we're not the only ones, here. And we've had success, but we need our reach to go further now. And so now you're like, okay, now we can have some fun. Like we've learned from our mistakes. We know what our brand should mean. And then we can reach out and have people help us with like, okay, how do we get it out there now?
Yeah, let's go back now to that. So y'all engaged Andrew, and
Yep.
you had a little bit of an atypical focus day, right? Give us a little setup on that and what that was like.
Yeah, we do. So we're headquartered in Minneapolis, but we are spread out throughout the U.S. And so I really love, even before like the COVID work from home phase, our founders had the idea of they don't have to be in Minneapolis. We just want the best people that we can get to come work for us, people who believe in our mission, believe in what we're trying to do, and it doesn't really matter where they are, right? Which was a great feeling to have when you joined the team, for one. But because of that, we're all very dispersed. And so we come together once a year, if not more, but at least once a year in Minneapolis. And we have a 2 to 3 day meeting. And these used to be strategy meetings that our CEO would help organize and run. And they were very successful. But every year she was like, we need somebody to kind of help us run this and keep us on track and make it, more productive for how many hours we're spending together. And so we always do that in October or September, October timeframe, I guess. And I think, did the interviews for the implementer like a month before that, and was basically like, okay, well, part of our criteria is you have to be able to come on this time, and it just worked out. And so Andrew worked with us on what we needed and was like, okay, we can adjust this to make this work, and we're going to have 2 days. And he was upfront with it. He was like, these 2 days are going to be, we're going to work every minute that we can to accomplish and get to where we need to for you guys to be successful with the next steps. And he did a fabulous job facilitating that and keeping us on track. And it was. And day one, you left, to be quite honest, and you were like, wow, this is amazing. Like, we talked through so many things. We were touching on the values, and I saw in the last podcast session, I think they touched on highlighting the people you want to model and hire after and whichever. And that is such a fulfilling conversation to have amongst leaders because you see those people every day. And so to be able to talk about them and say, like, those are the people, we want to continue to hire, it was fun. So the first day was invigorating. Like, you were, like, energized afterwards. The second day, you hit noon and you're like, man, here's what he told us about, this is getting a little long. But we powered through, and I'm so glad we did because we walked away with a VTO that we've tweaked a little bit since that first time. We walked away with high-level new values that weren't terribly far from the ones we had, but also reflected on the growth that we've had as a company and, how we've matured. And really, everybody for the first time seeing what 3 years looks like, what 5 years looks like, what 10 years looks like. Because when you work with a startup, you're wearing so many hats and you're running in a lot of different directions and you're like, I just am trying to get through the week.
Yeah.
And so, that's a lot of words to say. It was a great 2 days. It was intense.
Yeah.
It was a great 2 days, but it paid off.
And I remember, Andrew is big essence. Like, we're in the room, let's just get to the essence, right? We don't have to get everything polished and perfect. And then we had been working on, some stuff for about 3 months, I think, at that point in time. And then the VTO came out, so we're getting copies of that. And now I'm getting excited because I'm like, all right, now we're getting some details on things.
Yes.
So coming out of that, and I guess in a traditional sense, you'd have your focus day, and then you'd wait a month and you'd have your VB1, and y'all did those back to back really
crammed
quick.
them. Yep.
So as y'all left and you came out of that meeting in September, like, how did the team feel?
Yeah, I think overwhelmed a little bit. It was actually kind of a mixed feeling, I would say. Like, energized in the sense of, like, wow, like, we know so much more where we're going. Like, that really felt like the strategy session that I think we had all been trying to have in years past, but we actually walked away with, like, no, here is the strategy, right? Like, here it is. Now we got to go execute it, but here it is. So I think, that was good. And I remember texting you even a couple of times through it, and I'm like, hey, they keep saying securing everything from anywhere. Securing everything from anywhere. We have to use this.
And I'm slacking Rocky, and I'm like, hey, these lines, let's not forget these. Let's not forget these.
Because, like, they just kept coming up, and everybody was, like, so excited about it. And we ended up using it. I mean, it's part of our brand promise right now. And so, things like that just came out so naturally, through that process that after we left, it was like, okay, now we got to go. And I feel like Andrew did give us good direction. And I will say, probably one of the biggest kind of, like, aha type things that we had was when we actually loaded it all into the 90.io software. And you had told me about that before. He's like, you were like, are you using this? And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't even
Shout
know what
out
that
to
is.
90.
Yes. But once we started to do that and everything was visible in front of you, and then you start running your L10s out of that, that was the game changer for us because it was like, okay, all right, I see. And I feel like we grew through that process the more we used it because the first one we were like, okay, my rocks are in there. Looks like I'm on track, like, it's good. And then I remember probably, I don't know, maybe 2 months after we'd used it, Andrew was like, I'm going to join one of your guys' L10s and just observe. And I mean, I think all of us were kind of nervous. We were like, oh, I don't know if we're doing this right. Like, we think we are. And you could just kind of, it was almost like your parents when you were like.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. It's like the teacher's in the room.
Yeah. I don't know. And he did a good job of coaching us. And it was that, like, no, that's good. You could do it this way.
Yeah.
Right. And so then when we started to realize, like, okay, the rock is there, but it really needs those sub actions to keep us on track. And that's really what you're tracking and you're reporting on. Right. And then I feel like we just started using the tool in a more correct way after he said it with us. And I'm super excited with the next steps of, like, bringing that down to the teams then throughout the organization outside of just our leadership team.
So I want to get that. That's one of the things I wanted to ask. But let's back up now. Coming out on the VTO, what clarity on vision did y'all have?
So much. And I feel like as a marketer, that was the best thing that could have happened for me, because I was being chartered with, hey, okay, now we are going to be spending more and investing more in marketing. And you have to be aligned across the board as to what you're trying to achieve and what the true objective is of those marketing activities. And I always felt a little wish-washy before on that. Like, it was like, I think this is what we were supposed to be, marching towards. And I think we're all aligned. And probably we were. But that was we are. Take this, work off of this. This is what we're working towards, and we all know it. And so I think that VTO gave us what we needed to create our 90-day plans on the marketing front and feel really good that we were aligned clear up to the top.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think for me that it was almost like a map. It was just like, here it is, follow it, implement it, go. And
I think for us, the during that process, as we were going into that, we at Wonder, we have the tool. It's called the Brand Health Assessment, and we never want to lead clients down the path to say like, "Hey, we're going to start with brand," right?
Yeah.
And even when language comes up, we're like, "Well, let's we'll meet you where you are, and we'll see if we actually need to focus on messaging." But it was very evident that y'all, as an organization, had a leadership team that was passionate and aligned, an organization that saw belief in the leadership team with the vision and was on board with that. But both sides, it came back saying, but our internal beliefs, and our brand positioning, our value doesn't communicate externally.
Right.
And then as we went in and y'all came out with your VTO and you had your new your 10-year target of 1 million billable things. Mm-hmm. Now, as we started looking at language, it's like, all right, well, yeah, there's some brand strategy stuff we got to address. And we have a vision that's down the road. So we have to address, from a brand messaging perspective, what's right today, which is true and now, but then how will that carry us forward for a decade to reach 1 million billable things? And that became the tip to the spear for us to really focus on.
Yeah. No, it was just so helpful. And it helped direct us, but it also helped confirm things as well, right? Because I remember even going back through the values, and the first time we came back and we were like, here, we have 4.
Yeah.
And then the more brand work you and Rocky did, it was like, no, you have 5.
Correct. Yeah.
You can't forget the meaning of your name.
Yeah.
You have 5.
Yeah, that was actually, it was so the name meaning YourSix, right? Mm-hmm. We got your back. And that is a brand, right? Just the essence of that name. And as we went through and kind of unpacked everything and heard the core values, and we were trying to figure out, well, where does this idea of we got your back live? Is it a promise? And we were like, we got all the way through, got everything pretty shaped. And then we're like, that's actually the first core value. The day one, kind of the birthright of the brand was we got your back.
Yeah.
And so working that back in and y'all being receptive to that too.
Yeah. I think it just lands well because I do think we have such a passionate and experienced leadership team. Like, we've all worked in the channel for a really long time. We've been to multiple companies. And I think, you bring all that knowledge to the table, and to have a place where you truly feel like these people have my back.
Yeah.
And, and that is something when we interview folks, it's like, hey, this is what our brand means. And that means we have each other's backs, we have our partners' backs, we have our customers' backs. Like, we want to be known as the people that are there for you.
Yeah.
That is the DNA of our brand. And, if you look back at who founded the company, we were founded by veterans that, that's who they are.
Yeah.
They give, right? Yeah. And that's so instilled just in everybody at the company of just like, and one of them, be a good human, right? Like, be a good person, do the right thing, have everybody's back, like that is who we are as a company. And it just came out so much stronger the second time around of doing it the right way and implementing EOS the right way versus, and not that we did it bad.
Correct.
We just we weren't fully understanding the entirety of EOS.
So with that, the self-implementing,
Yep.
and then now with an implementer, what's your so y'all been formally implementing now for about 5 months,
Yep.
right? So 5,
Yep.
maybe 6 months. So what have you learned in the past 6 months that is the big aha prior to
Yeah.
hiring an implementer?
I think that the biggest thing, and I think I'm okay to speak for the team on this, is it's a priority. So with the L10s, our weekly meetings, it's a priority. Issues are coming to the table quicker because I think people now know, like, this is where I bring it up.
Yep.
And I think that visibility, even into what other departments are doing, even if it's just like that high level or you just see it in 90, you're like, oh, okay, they've got that. I don't need to.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues with startups is everybody is wearing so many different hats. And sometimes everything's a priority, which makes nothing a priority. And so I think the biggest thing we've seen from going from self to led is it's okay to just have 4 priorities and execute those 4 things
Really well.
and then move on.
Yep.
Right. Whereas before it was kind of more daunting of like, oh, okay, I've got 8 or, and then I'm part of your rocks too. So I've got pieces there
Yeah.
and then you just don't get anything truly accomplished or you're burning people out.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the other thing you're trying to balance is keeping people motivated at the same time.
And where are y'all in your evolution of rolling it out or bringing others into the fold for EOS?
Yeah. So we are getting ready to really pull it through the rest of the organization. And, part of that, honestly, right now, we are presenting to each department some of the new branding and just not really going into EOS just yet, but like positioning it as to you're going to learn more about this. And then I think within the next month, we're going to start introducing like the framework of EOS to the rest of our team. And then departmental L10s is what is the next step for us. So really kind of pulling that in, which, again, for a startup, sometimes you don't have a ton of middle management, as well. And so really that's that leadership team stepping in and running those department L10s, which is good, right? Which is fine. But some departments are 2 people.
And how many people do you have on leadership running on EOS now? And then how many organizationally? And a little bit of like structure, like how do you see that rolling out?
Yeah. So I think, in all honesty, I think we have departments that will roll it out quicker than some other departments, right? So we're a software company, and we have a lot of developers that they already probably run more on EOS than they even know that they already do, right? Because they're working off of project timelines and different things that are more tied. They may call them epics.
Yeah.
It's really a rock, right?
Yeah,
like
correct.
in the EOS world. I think it's more of the support departments that kind of get thrown things, right? And it's hard for them to be like, okay, I need to focus here. I need to focus there. I think pulling those L10s down to those departments is going to be the most impactful because it's going to provide them direction and alignment with the leadership team to kind of say, hey, okay, we know what you're working on. We're working on these things. Sometimes they're going to be aligned and we're helping you with that too, right? So I think we're going to see a little differences across departments, if I'm being completely honest, just because some I think are going to be like, well, we're already doing some of that. And others are going to be like, we're not doing that at all. We're just trying to survive.
And how many employees do y'all have today?
Oh, yeah. So we're a little over 60. I think we're at 62 total. We have employees in the U.S. and Sweden is where our center of excellence is, which is our software development. Primarily, we do have developers in the U.S., but yeah, and we've got the typical departments, tech, sales, marketing, finance, HR, tech support, those sorts of things. And each one of the leaders, I think, feels comfortable now after we've gone through the 2 days. We've had our first 90 meeting with Andrew, and we get homework and we, keep going down the path. But I think we're now feeling comfortable enough in our knowledge of EOS to be able to be like, no, I can go teach this to somebody else.
Yep. Train the trainer.
Yep.
And y'all are fully decentralized, or do you have a contingency of people in an office in Minneapolis?
So we do have an office in Minneapolis. It's mainly for our technical services. Okay. And I mean, anybody can go into the office. We give them the option outside of tech services, but right at this time of year, nobody wants to go into the office in Minneapolis. At least a lot of our demo cameras are, mounted off of our office in Minneapolis, and sometimes I'll dial in to do a demo call or something like that, and there's like 5 feet of snow. And I'm like, nope. Glad I live in South Carolina.
It's, the Zoom calls, you get together, you're waiting on everybody to pop on, and, Maddie will be on and we'll be chatting. And I'm like, it's freezing here. It's 42 degrees. And she's like, it's negative 70.
And I feel like my family and friends back home in Kansas are like, what are you talking about, Tracy? Like, it's not cold. And I remember like kind of not making fun of people in the South, but kind of being like, you guys, this is not cold. Yeah. And now after being here for 10 years, it's cold. Yes. Like, I don't know what happened, but it is cold. I don't know.
So now y'all are moving into, this year, this will be your first full year, right?
Yep.
As far as shaping, that 1 year plan.
Yeah.
What's that looking like now that you have EOS?
Yeah. So we're officially using the scorecard, which was, we had other reporting, that we would refer to on our weeklies but it was mainly about sales. Yeah. And so now we've pulled in all departments have pieces of the scorecard, and those scorecards is marching towards that 1 year, those 1 year marks, right? And so it's good. Sometimes the weekly is tough because, if you have a bad week, you're definitely in the red on the scorecard, and then you're hoping to come back in the green. But it's good, and I feel like the accountability is there. I do feel like that's the other thing that really helped us when we were going through is doing the accountability chart. Yeah. And just getting everybody on the same page as to what they are and are not accountable for. And I think for any startup, that's probably really good. My husband co-founded a small clothing company, and there's 3 employees, but I'm like, have you mapped this out? Like, who's doing what and whichever. I feel like I can hear Andrew in the back of my mind as I'm like telling him this. I'm like, oh, you should look at this. You need to do a VTO, and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, just trust me, it's fine. I handed him the traction book last week, so I was like, we'll meet again.
So what was that from most organizations have an organizational chart, or something? What was the jump from what you had to having your accountability chart?
Yeah. So it's exactly almost what you said. We had the org chart of you're in this department, you report to this person, right? But there wasn't any, this is what you're responsible for. Yeah. This is what you're accountable for. And I feel like even when I was talking to Lori, our CEO, she is the first touch for a lot of our new employees. Even her having clarity on some of that when she goes through and is welcoming new employees into the YourSix organization, being able to pull that chart up versus just the org chart and say like, okay, yeah, because I mean, an employee on day one, like an org chart with all these names on it probably means absolutely nothing. Right, you're like, great, that's a lot of people. I don't know any of them. But if you show a chart that's more about, here's our operations department, here's the things they're responsible for, here's our marketing department, here's what they're responsible for, is so much more impactful for a new employee coming in than just, here's who reports to who. Yeah. And it was good for us to go through that anyway. And we were figuring out who's the visionaries, who's the integrator, like that sort of thing. And I feel like for some of, like everybody but the 3 people in those seats, we were all crystal clear as to who that was. Our integrator, we all knew who she was, and she had to take some convincing because she was like, really? I don't know. That seems like a very large job. But it's who it worked out.
But you said something there. So visionary and integrator and the 3 people in those seats. Mm-hmm. Those are only 2 seats, right?
I know.
So y'all have a unique situation.
We do. And Andrew, he led us through that because he was like, hey, you really can only have one integrator, but you can have multiple visionaries. And for how our company was founded, we had visionaries on what the software looked like and what the actual solution looked like. And then we had visionaries on how to deliver it. And so that was really where we were like, we have two visionaries because we have the visionary of like, how do we take it to market? And then we have the visionary of how do we develop it? And sometimes their vision is the same and sometimes it's not, and you have that natural. I had a boss at ScamSource where she would always be like, this is a natural thing. Like people, this is where magic happens when they disagree, but they can disagree and come to, talk it out and come to a conclusion. That's where the magic happens, right? And so I feel like sometimes they don't disagree, but they have those healthy conversations of like, I think this is where we're going. And then sometimes the integrator comes in and is like, great, guys, we can't deliver on that.
Yeah.
Or we can, right? So that's been an interesting dynamic to see because they were playing those roles before. We just hadn't defined it as such, right? So
yeah, I would think that that you look at it from an org chart and on paper, you would be like, wait, this has to create tension. And the answer would be yes, right?
But healthy tension.
And as long as that the team understands that, then it's like, all right, that is, that tension can be a very productive and growth-oriented thing.
Yeah, I think the best thing, it just creates healthy conversation.
Yeah.
And it gives everybody kind of a safe space to be like, this is where I'm coming from. This is where you're coming from. And to sit back and say, I hear you.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And, because sometimes, and I get this way as a creative sometimes, it's like sometimes you get this idea and you're like, wow, that's a great idea. Like we could have so much fun with that. I think people would love it, whichever. And then you talk to somebody else, you're like, they start asking you like 5 questions and you're like, that idea's not any good. Like it's done. It's just not good. But yeah, you need those people in your life, right?
Yes.
Like you need the people that either validate you to what you're doing or that say like, yeah, I think you should go think about that again. Like let's ask some additional questions on what you really are trying to achieve.
Well, and so this brings up an idea that I hadn't come up on a previous episode, but before I really had EOS language to talk with people, people would ask me like, well, why are you such a believer in EOS? And I would say it just minimizes the drama. Mm-hmm. And when I was, my experience when I was an integrator, as in previous companies, there's drama.
Yeah.
And that drama can come from tension of not understanding clarity or roles or, And but as we rolled out EOS, it was like it really just started to mitigate the drama, and people just got aligned and focused.
Yeah.
So and the issue, resolution track of being able to be like, hey, I got a problem, and with just being candid about that, and people are now focused on solving it.
Yeah, and I think it helps them grow, right?
Yeah.
Like they respect each other, but they also know that they have a voice within the company, and I think. Just mapping that out and giving people the tools to do it. And it probably is why EOS is so successful for growing entrepreneurial companies, right? Is because you're in a constant mode of change.
Yeah.
And I think at any personally, professionally, when you're going through change, that's when drama really starts to rise, right? Like because people's emotions are higher, they're more stressed, getting pulled in different directions. And if you don't give people the tools to be able to manage through those changes or, those problem solving or how do we do this conversations, people are going to get frustrated. And then when people are frustrated, they go talk and create their own scenarios. And that's where companies can get themselves into a lot of trouble that they really could have avoided.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, so. I think that casting vision top down, but really with EOS, you run the business bottom up because of the issue track. So people every week have the opportunity to talk about where they're having challenges, and then those challenges roll up, and then they get pushed out to say that's something big. Let's do that next quarter. And now the issue last quarter is the priority for next quarter to help us be on track for where we're going to be in a year. And it really does. It's so simple, but once you get in it, it's messy. Simple doesn't always mean easy.
Yeah. But I find, and as I age, I'm getting more to the point where like almost everything comes back to communication.
Yeah.
Communication and aligned expectations. Like to me, personally, professionally, if I can achieve those two things using whatever tools, I need to use, most of the time things go pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
If I'm effectively communicating and I've aligned expectations across, whoever I'm trying to work with. And I feel like that's one of the primary things EOS does, right? Like it helps everybody communicate and they can clearly see. And then you're putting the expectation out there of like, hey, we're working on this, but don't expect it. Like, I have till this time to get it done,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
and here's the things I'm doing. But I feel like that just provides so much better interaction because the communication lines are open, the expectations are set, and you now have this open communication to the employees feel good about it, leadership feels good about it, and then you can avoid a lot of the drama of, well, I didn't know about that, or I didn't know you wanted me to do this, or whatever. And it's like, no, we're all on the same page.
And what, from a marketing perspective, being in that marketing seat on a leadership position, like how has EOS, in your role at YourSix, allowed you to be a stronger marketer?
Yeah, I think our relationship with sales has grown, whereas before we were doing more proactive marketing and brand awareness thing before we were actually doing those things.
Yeah.
After we started working with you, it was a lot of reactive and, oh, we need this, but it wasn't strategically aligned. It was more tactical. We were just treading water, more, type of thing. And now, I've expanded my team and we are having different conversations with sales because now it's like, okay, we have this plan. We need to add X amount of partners and here's the budgets and here's, are we aligned on how we're going to go do that? And I think the communication lines are just different now. It's less a one-way, of like, I just need this done.
Yeah.
And it's more of a back and forth of like, okay, we're thinking about doing this. This is what we're trying to achieve with this. Are you on board? Is this goal aligned? We had, when we were talking about recruiting new partners around marketing, right? Like there was a very clear group that we were like, hey, if we go get this group, that's fine. And we were marching towards that. And then when I ended up sitting down with Ryan and he was like, you know what, let's just leave that adjective out of there, right? It just needs to be partners. I just want more partners. And, it's one word, but it's one word that opened up different avenues for marketing, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like had we not, put that work in and put it in, and that communication was back and forth, we potentially could have marched down a path and then he come back 3 weeks or 3 months later and been like, why are you just targeting this group? And it's like, well, that's what we're targeting. And he's like, I don't care,
Yeah.
And so I think that's been like one of the best things that's come out of it is just that visibility and then the common language that we're all talking because we all know what the plan is.
Well, on that common language too, that was, so y'all go to market through the channel, through multiple channels.
Yep.
And I remember when Andrew came back from that y'all's first 2-day, his thing was he was like, in customer, that's the term, right? He was like that. So there was just language on the idea of we go through these channels and y'all have got your 2 channels you go through and then the end customer language and who is who. And that's complicated.
Yeah.
So how has just, what role has EOS played in simplifying that complexity?
Yeah. It actually just forced us to define it because I think, I mentioned our leadership team's very experienced, has worked in the channel or worked in technology or distribution or manufacturing. Like that's really the core of where we came from. And, these descriptors of either partners or customers, they're different. And we also are global, right? Mm-hmm. So what a U.S. employee thinks, maybe a Sweden employee is calling it something completely different. And so then when we go to work with them, I'm saying partner, they're thinking distributor or, whichever, right? And so EOS forced us to define some of those things and then even get everybody aligned on it. One of the things that came up in the when we were setting our goals for the 1 year, 3 year, and we started talking about things, and I was one of the people in the room, but was like, what is the thing? Like, because my background is, if it's a SKU, it's a billable SKU and we're counting, that's what's going on the software. And so, what really came out of that is like, hey, there's actually multiple things being connected, even through one camera or whichever. And it was like, man, I okay. And, but understanding then, even when we go to have our company meetings, that now if we're going to start talking about it as things, not devices, we have to define things and make sure everybody understands that, and then have a way to measure things, right? And so the being forced to define it has been good for us, because now everybody understands user and customer, this is the term.
Well, and it also brings clarity to, all right, that's the vision, right? That's the, we got the why and the where, which is, why we are who we are and where we're headed.
Yeah.
And then you got the how, is it, the how and the when? No, anyway. So then you're going to break that down and say, like, all right, well, yes, there's a whole flow that's going to come out of this goal of a million things.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to break that down, and processes are going to have to be built, and strategies are going to have to be put in place, and scorecards are going to have to be built. Yeah. But it's all towards that single tip to the spear.
Yeah. And I think another kind of big moment for us too was really understanding, like, where do we win? Because even coming from, distribution and even technology as a whole, there's like all these different industries that you can go play in, right? And that could potentially consume your solution. But every technology has their niche, right? Like we have our best chance of winning when we show up like this, or we show up here, or whichever, right? And so I think even narrowing that focus in has been good for us, because if you think about it, physical security, I would challenge, where couldn't it be sold, right? Which makes it really difficult to be, honed in on where you're trying to go. And so I think that's been a journey for us as well, as to like really look at our solution, look at our, how it best fits, and then go after those where we're like, we are, like, hey, if they have multiple locations and, they're trying to, their IT directors wanting a more streamlined way to deploy, great. If it's a place where it's like all centralized, they have an IT department in-house, whichever, some of the value that our software brings maybe isn't as valuable as we think it is. I mean, I think it always is valuable, and I think they would probably find value in it. But it's probably a harder sell for us, right? And so let's go with our limited resources and go where we can win. And so, things like we're working on proven process right now and different things like that I think is really helping direct our sales teams and then our marketing teams into go here, like go where we can win, where we know, we have case studies and we have all of this value we can bring to this end customer. And I think that's been super helpful for us just to provide focus.
Yeah, I think, giving props to Andrew again, I think that's one of the things he's got this rubric brain, right? Mm-hmm. And he'll walk you through. It's not an EOS thing. It's just a way to think through. Yeah. Like, all right, if these are your markets, here's your criteria, score those, go, and then tally those up. And it's very enlightening.
It is.
To be like, wow, that was a very simple exercise. But now in doing that, because I remember that was another thing he came back with, and you sent us the sheet. Yeah. And it's like, here's our verticals, and here's why. Because if you look at these, some are, great fit existing customers, but there's only two.
Yeah, it's saturated. It's done.
And then it's like, but over here, there's all this more opportunity. Yeah. And I think having that's just been a huge value for us, even with him, is he understands your business and provide insights into that as well. Yeah. And carries that thread, right? It's we all can go 3 months at a time and kind of hold this stuff and remember, like, all right, these are the important things.
Exactly.
So it's so tools. Let's talk about the 20 tools of EOS. Yep. So when as you've been on your journey so far, what is something that you've really latched onto?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the VTO is probably my most important one, and I would guess a lot of EOS companies jump towards that one probably as a favorite, just because I feel like it is the foundational map, right? Like, so if somebody wants to know what's happening, that's where you look first, right? So I think that's good. I feel like the L10s, just even the structure of the L10s, and again, using the software to guide us through there has been good. We laugh because you have to rate yourself at the end of each L10, you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like, there's a couple people that are really, it's going to be hard to get them to, like, full satisfaction. But we kind of laugh at it at the end of, like, an 8 again? Come on, you know? Like,
And
we thought this was good.
Your integrator, like Andrew gets those reports too.
Oh, he does?
Well,
Oh my gosh, I didn't
he
even
is on
know.
ours. I don't know if he does.
He probably
But he's in
does.
our L10.
He
So it's
probably
like
does.
he's not there. But so he gets to, he'll be like, hey, you know,
Yeah.
y'all had some challenges I see last week.
Yeah. I think and you know, this is where I do feel like EOS, you have to make it work for you too,
Yeah.
right? Like it is, the framework is there and it is supposed to be worked in a certain way. But I do think you have to be willing to bend a little bit to make it work for your company. Like we were really struggling with the time allotments, like, and it was almost like stressful because it was like, oh my gosh, we only have a minute left. Like,
Yeah.
we still have to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
this, and that clock's going, you know. And,
Yeah.
and the one that Andrew joined us with, he's like, you guys know, like, it's a guide. It's a guide. Don't freak yourself out about it, you know. And you can tell you've got a lot of like performing people in the room where
Yeah.
we're like, it's blinking red, like we have to stop, you know. But he's like, no, you know. You need to make this work for you. It's a guide. Yes, try to stay in that. But if you don't, like it's not the end of the world. You know, like you didn't fail. You're not going to get 2, type of thing. And so some of that, you know, I do feel like that message does need to get out around EOS as well. Because if you look at it like from a very rigid standpoint, you could probably get kind of frustrated.
Yeah.
You know, just because you're like, man, we're not doing this right. But then again, the implementer comes in and is like, it's a guide. It's a guide.
Well, in our L10 this past Monday, we got to like whatever we were going to be done. I think it was, we started 11:30, and it was 11:29, and we're getting ready to wrap up. And I said, do I have permission for us to go 5 extra minutes on something?
Yeah.
And everyone said yes. So we added 5 minutes, and when we got done at 11:35, it was
Yeah.
we consider that finishing on time.
Yeah.
But I like make sure I got permission
Yeah.
versus just talking through it and going over.
And I think that's the way you have to do it. And our integrator who runs our meetings, she's very good about that of like, hey, if you guys have an extra 5 minutes, great. If you need to drop, you can drop, you know, type of thing, and giving that grace. But I do think that's where, like, once we allowed ourselves to give a little grace on it, it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. We're good.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes, and I personally love the first part of the L10 because we are remote. And so the sharing of the personal and the professional wins, you know, I feel like that's brought us closer as a team just because, you know, you discover hobbies of folks, or, you know, my daughter does dance and we just got through dance competition. So I feel like every week I had a dance update, but I told them, I'm like, I don't know, dance in the NFL is off right now. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out my life
March
as
Madness.
to what my new thing is. But I feel like, you know, you see the human side before you dive into some of the, you know, more serious talk.
Well, I think so you got vision, traction, and healthy. And I think that's where the relational component is more important than the framework component.
Yeah.
If, you know, whatever, breaking the rules a little bit keeps you healthy.
Right.
Right. Like that's the part that's super important.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, you get into that vibe of once you get, you know, you get the groove going, and then you realize like, oh, these are still the important things. But 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, skip the section. I got to talk about something like it's especially within the L10.
Right.
It's healthy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you have to determine that for, you know, yourself, but also like you kind of think about it as the diet. You don't get too far off because then you can't come back. You know, then you're just like, oh, I've cheated so much, it's fine, like whatever, right? Like
well,
I'll
that's
start
the
tomorrow.
unhealthy part, right?
Exactly. That's the veer off. But eat the chocolate bar now and just
Well, Tracy, this has been awesome. It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been a joy to be a part of y'all's journey working together. And I know we are just now in the brand activation phase. So
Yeah.
we have some shared goals for the
We
end of this
do.
year, right?
Yes, some exciting
so
things
I think
coming.
this may be a one part A, part B as we go through and
Yeah.
just really get to activate a brand at the same timeline that y'all are implementing EOS. So
Yeah. It's a really exciting time for us as a company. Just so many good things happening and, just us maturing as a brand. And it's like we grew into who we wanted to be,
Yep.
right? Who we started to be down the path. And like, we're right there and ready to start the race here.
Well, parting thoughts. I mean, for anybody who's listening who's thinking about running on EOS, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I mean, I think working for a large organization, right, we always were getting training and you kind of had this framework but it was kind of left to those leaders to run. And so I'd always kind of had that in the past. The EOS was new to me coming to YourSix. And so I think take your time and understand, really what it is. Because if you jump to, I already know this because I've worked for company ABC, and we had all of this training and we did this and it is helpful. It's not that it's not helpful, but the EOS system is meant to meet these entrepreneurs where they are, right? And help them grow. And I think, the best advice I can give is like really embrace it. Try not to bring in past things that maybe, would make you sway one way or I already know this type of thing. But embrace it. And then, you can go the path that we did where we self-implemented and then, had help. But I would say, like, I feel like we really got into it when we had help.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're inclined and have the resources to be able to have an implementer along your side, I think that's where it really turned on for us. We walked before we ran in this journey, which is good. It was the journey that we took and that worked for us. But I think if we wanted to accelerate that, that is one thing I kind of question is like, if Andrew would have came in a year before, like what does that look like? And the reality is we probably weren't ready for it, right? Because on our journey, the Series A, hadn't happened yet. And, we probably would have been frustrated because we had all these ideas that we couldn't implement them. But now, we can. And it feels good to have everybody on the same page and empowering at the same time. So I think the quicker you can get to the, having help phase is better. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, we can do it ourselves, right? But there's so much clarity that comes from an implementer that it just changed the way we were using it for just the good, right? So
awesome. Well, thank you, Tracy. This has been a great conversation.
Yes,
and,
thank you for everything.
I'll see you Tuesday for our call.
Yes. Yes.